Okay, hi, this is Damien Marie AtHope, and I am an axiological atheist, which can simply be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. And I'm going to do a presentation now on animism. And I am starting from, I believe, its earliest beginnings, such as that seen in Africa around 100,000 years ago. So to me, animism is approximately a 100,000-year-old belief system, and it involves the believing in spirit-filled life or afterlife, in a sense. And if you believe, in things like this, regardless of your proposed chosen faith or lack of faith, you are a hidden animist. Neanderthals, to me, possibly could have imparted some sort of these ideas to us. This is my hypothesis. I'm wondering, did Neanderthals teach us primal religion? Or such as primal or pre-animism or animism, possibly even itself, 120,000 years ago. Homo sapiens, or modern humans, have known to have reached the area of the Levant 120,000 years ago to 90,000 years ago. But that, exit from Africa eventually, though, went extinct. They came from Africa and possibly went back to Africa, or just died out. But they possibly could have transferred these ideas before doing so. So there is evidence of 100,000 years ago in a cave in Israel with the oldest intentional burial of modern humans, containing 15 African individuals covered in red ochre. And it was a group, in a sense, who seemed to have visited, Israel, and then, like I said, possibly returning back to Africa or dispersing further into other areas and then dying off. So 100,000, though, to 74,000 years ago in Border Cave in South Africa, or Southern Africa, I should say, there's an intentional burial of an infant, also covered with red ochre and with shell ornament, which may have possibly have connections to ideas from the Africans buried in the Israel cave. Now, all this may sound, far-fetched to some people, but we have to understand they were already making shell beads 200,000 years ago. There's evidence of this even in Libya. Not to mention, Neanderthals, they built a series of large underground circles with stalactite structures they had broken off. And it's 175,000 years ago in France, possibly hinting to their emerging religious ideas. So the question for me, right, is, did Neanderthals teach us primal religion? Well, in the Tabern Cave in Israel, there's found evidence of a Neanderthal type burial with an arcane human female, or maybe even a hybrid. There is some evidence of burial at Shoal Cave at 130 to 100,000, which may have been Neanderthal human hybrids as well, or maybe just Neanderthal. Though it also could be early modern humans, because they had started to emerge from this area, and it would be interesting to wonder if they had transferred ideas to be among each other. Now, this thinking that Neanderthals already, in a sense, contained this idea for primal religion and didn't have it transferred the other way, humans to Neanderthal, is because it's supported in the fact how 250,000 years ago, Neanderthals were already using red ochre, long before humans. And there's possible but is somewhat disputed evidence of Neanderthal burial going back to 230,000 years ago. All this, though, shows evidence of Neanderthals doing these intentional burials way prior to humans. In a sense, Neanderthals are also, in a sense, a human, but I mean modern humans. Homo sapiens sapiens. Anyways, Neanderthals doing this, putting people in burial and using red ochre, in a symbolic, way, to me, possibly, shows a belief in an afterlife. So the 130,000-year-old evidence is the earliest undisputed evidence for intentional burial, and it's done by Neanderthals. The evidence suggests that Neanderthals were, in a sense, the first humans to intentionally bury the dead, and possibly doing so even involving rituals like cannibalism, which could be evidence of death rituals and symbolic meaning. And the Neanderthals generally, though, are doing so by putting people in shallow graves, along with possibly stone tools, animal bones, still showing symbolic behavior, and possibly, to me, Pre-Animism. So, the evidence suggests that Neanderthals buried their dead at such sites as the one in Corsica. There was a total of 876 single Neanderthal bone fossil fragments. And the bones belong to several dozen different individuals of different sex from 2 years old to 40 years of age, showing that they had a seemingly range of respect for life across the time span of life. Over 1,000 pieces of various stone tools and weapons from the Paleolithic era were also found there, all in a sense witnessing to a material culture in the sense of these proto-humans. And this is, in a sense, also involving, like I said, a time of 130,000 years ago. There are remnants of fossils of shells from the ocean. We have cave bear, wolf, moose, large deer, and warm climate rhinoceros. Wild cattle and many other animals were found there. Moreover, the most interesting is the bird skeletons, some of which the parts have been modified and are found associated with the Neanderthal bones, possibly as grave goods. And there are some talon bones and foot bones from the white-tailed eagle. There appear to be cut marks on the talons and foot bones, which seems to be that they were attached, suggesting the Neanderthals were using the talons as bones or jewelry. And I'm assuming that it also could be, in a sense, a ritualistic item, or almost a totemistic item. And then it was offered as grave goods, seeming to show a reverence for the connection of that to the passing of life. And this seems to be supported with the findings of even gut fiber tied around a part of a talon. There are foot bones and talons that have been obviously modified and cut and grooved. Neanderthals were largely carnivores, though they are known also to use medical plants. So the distributions out of Africa, it can't be just seen as a symbol, a single event. That there was at least one event, an early exit out of Africa, going all the way to China, is about 80,000 to 120,000 years ago. Then another event happening after that, which is what all humans out of Africa tie to today. So the history of inbreeding needs to be understood between these arcane, in a sense, proto-humans, or, and then the modern humans we are today. So early modern humans, Desovians, and Neanderthals all interbred with each other multiple times on multiple occasions in the past, especially in the past 100,000 years ago. So, getting back to North Israel and 120,000 years ago, with the Neanderthal type burial of a female, the material remains in that cave for the Tabern Cave in Israel relates to a type of culture, stone tool culture, that goes back 200,000 to 45,000 years ago. It involves small flint tools made of thin flakes, which is in a sense a more labor-intensive sort of action, more than just would be needed for just a simple tool use. It's getting more like refined and showing more effort and ability of mind. And many of the procedures are a technique that involves carefully trimming the flint core before the desired shape is even knocked off. And tools typical of this culture are elongated points, flakes of various shapes used as scrapers, and many other tools used for cutting and sawing. Primal religion, to me, for modern humans, is basically about an animism, and it's about 100,000 years ago. And to me, it begins or is inspired in Israel, but it's Africans doing it, and they this idea is, to me, gets transferred back to Africa, and then it emerges from Africa. In a sense, this early burials in Israel of the modern humans were stained with red ochre, just like the Neanderthals before them. And a variety of grave goods were also found at the burial site. 71 pieces of red ochre were also offered. Ochre stained the bone and tools that were found, suggesting that even the tools offered in the grave were possibly of ritual use. And the red ochre itself, to me, connects to the earlier hominids before humans. There also was a person who had a mandible of a wild boar found placed in their arms. To me, all of this goes to the symbolic behavior. So like I said, this makes me wonder, did Neanderthals inspire or somehow transfer some of these ideas? It would seem that it would be possible with nothing else than just the red ochre being used. But evidence suggests that Neanderthals, in a sense, like I said, were the first humans to intentionally bury. And I think it's interesting that we show up in an area doing this almost the same behaviors in the same kind of ways. A population that went to Africa, in a sense, diverged early from other modern humans in Africa. And did contribute genetically to the ancestors of the Neanderthal. This is evidence, this early leaving of Africa and transferring of DNA is found in the Altai Mountains of Siberia at about 100,000 years ago. By contrast, we don't have any direct genetic contributions in the Desovians this time, or in a sense, and European Neanderthals. So there was a difference, in a sense, even in the Neanderthals that were in the Altai Mountains of Siberia and the ones that were in Europe itself. In addition to later inbreeding events, the ancestors of the Neanderthals in the Altai Mountains and early modern humans met and interbred, possibly even doing this in the Near East, many thousands of years earlier than previously thought. A set of 7 teeth were found at the Tabernan Cave in Israel and were studied and found to most likely belong to a Neanderthal that had lived 90,000 years ago. There's another Neanderthal. And another one from that same cave, the limb bones are characteristic of a Neanderthal, where the lower jaw was a combination of Neanderthal and earlier human features. This fossil also dates to 150,000 years ago. A fossil human jaw in a collapsed cave in Israel is said to date back to between 177,000 and 190,000 years old, meaning that they could have even interacted sooner. And the Tabernan Cave contained a Neanderthal, as I said before, type burial female, and dated at 120,000 years ago. But objects at Tabernan Cave suggest that ancestral humans were there, even using fire at this site on a regular basis since about 350,000 years ago. So the remains of several adults, modern humans, 3 children were found in Shoal Cave in Israel, and are claimed to have been burials. Assemblages performed seem to involve things like shells, significantly different from the local, in a sense, area, and have been recovered from an area far away, suggesting these people may have collected these and employed these shells as beads, and likely not been used directly as food. And a layer number B has been dated to an average of 101,000 to 81,000 years ago. But an average date could be of 119. And shoal number 5, there's a mandible, as we said before, with the wild boar on the person's chest. It is possible that Neanderthals and early modern humans did make contact in the region, even if it was just to transfer ideas and not genes. It may be possible that the shoal and other cave hominids are partly containing a Neanderthal descent. Non-African modern humans contain 1.4% Neanderthal genetic material, with hybridization possibly having taken place in places such as the Middle East. Modern humans were present in Arabia and South Asia earlier than a lot of people currently believe. And probably this presence was connected to the Levant between 130 to 170,000 years ago. To 70,000 years ago. This is the same route proposed to have been taken by people who made modern tools in the area. A Neanderthal girl's toe bone of ancient DNA says her ancestors mated with modern humans 100,000 years ago. A 100,000 years ago, though, to me is the oldest, in a sense, known burial of modern humans. So, getting back to Africa, early animism in Africa, there's evidence of 100,000 to 74,000 years ago in Border Cave in southern Africa. And to me, animism begins about 100,000 years ago. And it involves several different types of dispersion of tool cultures along with it. Now, when I think of animism, I don't think of it to me as people think of religions today. It's more like how people can say they're spiritual, non-religious. In other words, they're not connected to some particular dogma, but they still have, magical thinking, woo beliefs, and often, and believe that everything is connected and the spiritual energies and everything in a sense is alive or spirit. That's all that animism kind of talk. And so it seems that someone would say it's crazy that that I could say that Neanderthals or archaic humans could have religion, but the evidence simply is that there is evidence that shows that these archaic humans actually, were doing stuff in a sense before we were. And they're doing it in a symbolic way that we then later call symbolic behavior, and thus we're the ones that are calling the things that we do religion or religious type of ideas, but somehow think that we can look at those same behaviors in archaic humans and go, oh, well, that's not religion. That's just, I mean, I find that to be an odd thing to me. But I'm not really trying, to convince you that it has to be Neanderthals. My point is to understand that these ideas are evolving ideas. And even if it was humans that invented these ideas, they start simple and then they're like Legos or a puzzle. They just keep building on themselves. If religion is about truth, why do so many feel a need to force it? According to Global Religious Landscape of the Pew Research Center, nearly 3/4 or 73% of the world's religious people live in countries that their religious group makes up the majority of the population. So it would seem religious persuasion, belief, is more likely to a thing to connect to aspects attributed to a hereditary religion than anything of a matter of intellect or even chosen religion. Thinking freedom. Beliefs based on some valid and reliable justification and truth. Is this what religions try to do? Provide thinking freedom? I don't think so. And to me, a great majority of why we have religions today is largely attributed to this hereditary religion. As in, someone in power told you what your religion was, and you agreed. Someone in power forcing religion on a child is most often how this happens. Why hereditary religion does so well all the world over is its victims are forced to learn things like authority bias, illusion of truth effect, status quo bias, anchoring bias, confirmation bias, post-purchase rationalization, authority bias, and the tendency to attribute greater accuracy to their opinions of an authority figure they believe in, and it's unrelated to if it's true. And these are what influence such strong opinions and behaviors. So there is evidence of 75,000 to 70,000 years ago, the first worship in South Africa of a stone snake. So that, and if anyone can say that there's a worship and it's a god, well, I guess the god must be a snake in South Africa. And to me, this brings up that how we should be careful in what we believe, that we should be thoughtful in what is real. And to me, religion, especially animism, is appealing. I mean, 7 years old, people are generally up to that point, from birth until 7, have a sort of an animistic mindset. That children are vulnerable, and I feel like that is why religious people feel such need to get the child as soon as possible, into this religious indoctrination, these Christian Sunday schools, and to me, it's this domination because the ideas are not true. They believe them takes, this indoctrination process that starts at the beginning of life for people that are religious, in most cases. And then it's in our societies, because our culture is not limited to simply the family, but the whole environment in which we are immersed in. And that is why you see 73% of all religious people being connected to the area they're in. And thank you, and have a great day.